Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome back to High Vibin' It. We are very excited to chat with / at you for you today on the podcast. We have a really special guest, and he wears many hats. He is an entrepreneur, an author, a speaker, new media host, wealth advisor. Please, everybody, welcome Ken Kladouris. We are very excited to chat with him today about probably success, what success means, how to line up with our own personal success, things of this nature. Ken, say hi to the peeps.
Well, hello. Thanks for having me on today. I'm excited to talk with you.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
So Ken, origin story.
This is Lindsay's favorite part.
Okay.
It really is. I love getting to the root of what makes someone tick and who they are and how they got here and what brings you to the podcast all the way today. So if you could just go as in detail as you want to, but I think the listeners really like to hear your step one and how you got into what you're doing now, and just kind of whatever you want to share with us on your journey up until today.
Well, I'd say I never thought I would be here to start. So, and I say that because, I really wanted to focus my career on finance, be a financial advisor, right? Undergraduate degree, master's degree in finance. And that was kind of what I've been doing for the last decade. And then, had early success, and it was really just, I hit a point in my life where I would say, doing the same thing all the time, kind of living on repeat, and felt stuck at a level that most people thought was successful, and I was very comfortable at. And then I hit a moment on a vacation where kind of everything kind of cleared away for me, and all my limiting beliefs and any decision I'd ever made in the past and all that kind of washed away. And I was left feeling like I could accomplish so much more. And that started me on the journey that's led me to you here today.
Wow, I got to go on one of these vacations. This sounds great. The rebirth vacation.
Yes, exactly.
I like that.
I think some of my favorite conversations on the show have been with people who make a point to say, on the outside, my life looked like you would expect a very successful, happy person to look, but there was something that just didn't really fit, or something wasn't clicking to allow you to feel like the fulfillment, the joy, the completeness, that people expect you to feel when you reach a certain level of success. So can you, I don't know, can you go into maybe how you felt and describe a little bit about what that feels like to just not something's, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you know what I'm trying to say? Something's missing, something's just not clicking for you.
Yeah. Well, I would say that, so pre my vacation moment, I didn't even have the awareness that something was missing. I just felt like this was my life and this is how it was going to be for the remainder of time, because I had accomplished the goals that I'd laid out for myself. Was, like I said, having a lot of fun and enjoying life, but something, while I didn't feel it was missing, I just felt like it was the same thing over and over.
Yes. Redundant, repetition. Yeah.
And then there was no way. I knew the trajectory going forward. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is the milestones I'll hit. And I don't know, just in the moment, it felt fine. But looking back, I was like, wow, I was really stuck and just not in a good place.
So what I'm seeing in my mind is you climb the mountain, you get to the top, and the view is crap. Or the view is meh. So then you're like, but wait a minute, I did all of this. I did the work. The view's supposed to be great. What's going on here? I guess this is just the view. And so many people go through, spend years, maybe lifetimes, just in the space of I guess this is my life, and don't really think to or give themselves permission to maybe think outside of what they're doing. And ask those questions of but what if it could feel different?
Right. Exactly. And, I think that it takes, for me, I kept myself so busy that I never had time to really think about anything else.
Yeah.
Right. Or reflect on anything and, even get myself out of my comfort zone. And while I was busy and felt like I was accomplishing things and doing everything I was supposed to, really, I was just busy.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of busy bees out there listening to this who can relate. Maybe it would be beneficial to slow down, take a little break here and there.
Yeah. So when was the turning point for you? Did you mention like what year was that?
So that was in 2017. No,
Ah,
sorry, bad math. This is COVID years, right?
I did that already. Yep.
Before the show, we were all
I was
into
like
the
thinking
bad
7
math.
years. It was 2015.
Uh-huh. Got it.
Yeah.
And so what did you do? What was, I guess, what's a good question? What was your first step to be able to maybe venture into that idea that maybe it could feel different?
Yeah. Well, I'd say that, everybody has a vacation, they enjoy it, right? And then they go home and like real life is waiting for you.
Yeah.
And so real life was waiting for me when I got home, and I still had all my obligations and business and everything else. So it was really a slow process of just trying to figure out what was the thing that was going to work.
Yeah.
And so I, just jumped into just a lot of reading on personal development, spirituality, sales coaching, like if you name it, I probably did it. And I spent years just trying to figure out what was going to work the best for me and really get me back to that place of just abundance and clarity.
Yeah. So now that you're in that place of more personal clarity and like your passions and what works for you and what lights you up, what would you say your present day definition of success is? And maybe how does that differ from your old definition of success? Because I'm sure when you were in school studying finance, you were probably fed a lot of narratives of like what success is, how it's supposed to look. And then maybe you did that and then you're like, maybe that's not all it is for me. So now what would you say your definition of success is?
Yeah. I mean, while there's like a lot of layers to success, at the end of the day, it's really being able to live your life in the fashion and the freedoms that you feel are, appropriate for you. So, there's so many people that again feel stuck or struggle or just never feel like they're going to get out of like the pit that they're in. And once you climb to the top and you kind of get out of it, you're like, okay, from here, what do I want to do? What do I want my life to look like? And then having the ability to actually move forward on those, that's success.
Yes, I like that. So for you personally, what are some of those elements that light you up and feel like, oh, I'm doing my thing?
Again, so many. I just got back from a vacation that was like next level. I met
Nice.
some
Another
incredible
rebirth?
people. No, the vacations really aren't like that anymore. That's more of like, I would almost call it like a mastermind, but just
Cool.
being around people that are really inspiring to me. Like I put myself in situations where the people around me are out of my comfort zone. That way it just makes me, push harder. But I still get to have a lot of fun. And so, I mean, that's for me, again, doing this kind of stuff, helping my clients with their real estate, doing the wealth management, and then just seeing the impact that, just a few tools can have on a person's life, and then watch them go out and make a change is another definition of success for me.
Yes. Can we touch on tools for a moment? Because I feel like in the self-development, self-empowerment community, there's some teachers who think they're so enlightened that they kind of like poop on tools and they're like, oh, tools are just for, like when you're in the beginning stage or like when you're enlightened, you don't need tools anymore. And I'm just like, tools are so helpful. I think personally, tools are
Right.
so helpful. And like, not everyone's going to get enlightened right away or even in this lifetime. So until then, I think it's really beneficial to have tools. And it sounds like you do too.
Yeah. Well, I've never met a truly enlightened person.
Yeah.
So unless that
Right.
person's walking on water or something, like they might want to check their ego
Well,
and
and
go back.
We've mentioned this before, like when you are that enlightened where you're not interested in having like a human experience anymore, like wouldn't you just be dead then at that point? Like
Right.
aren't you done? You're done, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't think I'm ever good. I hope I never get to a point where I'm like too good for tools. Like I want to
Right.
be able to use the new thing. Anyway, so
Yeah.
we were just talking about that, like enlightened, schmightened, whatever.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And this just like, I mean, I guess it's just another form of like the ego disguising itself as like spirituality, right? But I did like this pre-interview with this guy and I was going to be on his show and I was like, yeah, these are some of the ways that I help people and, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, well, we just don't really talk about tools on this show anymore. We're just like way past that. And that's not really that interesting. And like, that's not really like, that's not it anymore. That's like the old way. And I was like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? I was like, clearly I don't want to be on his show. It doesn't feel aligned.
Right.
But yeah, that just stuck out to me as really bizarre. So I'm glad that you brought it here today, that like, yeah, I use tools. I help my clients with tools. Tools are cool.
Well, you
I
gotta,
like helping out the beginners or the people that
right.
are like level 1 and 2 and 3.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like standing at the finish line and being like, oh, I'm going to tell you how to be enlightened only here, though. Like, I'm not going to
Right.
help anybody get there. You're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right. You got to
So,
start somewhere. So
yeah.
speaking of tools, what are some of your personal favorites? Do you have like some daily tools? Do you have some tools to get you out of stuck points? Like, what are you working with these days?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that's kind of why I created the course Stillness to Success, was to create, a process for somebody to kind of work through all the tools. But I would say the foundational tool is meditation, that stillness place, just to create space for yourself, be able to step away from the noise and get clarity on who you are, what you want, and like what values are important to you. So I guess I just listed 5 tools.
Yeah.
But the first one is, again, just creating that mental stillness through meditation.
Yeah. And you do mention this in the questionnaire before the show. And I love the questions that you submitted. And I do want to talk about one of them in particular, personally for you.
Yes.
How did you find that stillness was able to help you get clarity? Like, how did that happen for you? Especially, I'm assuming you began at some point, like you were a beginner. So going into it, a lot of people are like, I just can't quiet my mind. So how are you able to do that? And what should people know if they're trying to get into just stillness to be able to get that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, obviously finance.
That's a lot of questions. Sorry.
Yeah. I can answer all of them in like one short answer, I think.
Good.
I never really understood anything about meditation prior to learning how to meditate. And now that I do, and I now instruct people on how to meditate, it's funny because everybody does have that, oh, I can't quiet my mind. I always have a thought, right? All these excuses. But I think that, I share with people that, so my meditation that I teach is 20 minutes. And even for me, after, meditating for a long time, the first 10 minutes is really just settling down from like the busy day into the meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I know that's the first 10 minutes, like I'm going to have a lot of thoughts, physical things are going to be happening, and it's going to be more of just calming down to that stillness. And then the last 10 minutes is where I really get the benefit. And so giving people permission to have thoughts and ideas, and let them know like, hey, it's going to take a while for you to calm down your nervous system from your daily activity to a meditative state. And like, just to go with the process, I think really helps people get started.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Just kind of leaning into the fact that you're going to have thoughts. Like I'm a hypnotherapist, and people are always a lot of times like, but what if I think about stuff? I'm like, well, you're going to think of it. We're not turning your mind off. It's not happening that way. But, if you can allow, and I love the way you said, just allow time for it, and you're good. Just expect it to happen.
Schedule it in.
Schedule it in.
The transition. I love that.
And practice makes better. You're going to get better at it the more you practice. And I also love to point out that your body already knows how to meditate. It just doesn't know how to do it on command yet. Because we're always going in and out of like these daydreamy trances, or these moments of like, whoa, what was I just thinking about? Or how did I drive home? What's going on here? We're always doing that. Our bodies biologically know how to do it. So when I tell people that, you know how to do this already, we're just teaching your body to do it when you want to do it and when you are intentional about it. So it kind of okay, well, maybe I could just tap into this ability that I already have. It sometimes makes it easier. I know that's what helped me at first, is like, oh, I already do this. Oh, all right. I can get on board with that. Like, it's just it's a nice way to ease in, I guess.
Right.
I love that. I love that answer. Okay. So stillness, what is stillness for people that are just really at like square one?
People have never experienced it, maybe.
Right. I mean, again, it's just kind of, not to get like too into like this craziness of, oh, it's the gap or whatever. It's really
Let's go to the gap. Let's
see.
I want to go to the gap. I want to go.
I just think stillness is, again, being able to just quiet that mental chatter, so that, like that still small voice in your head, that intuition, if you will, like you can actually hear it. And once you get into like that place where you kind of can feel that more and more throughout the day, that's when you start to, experience the benefits of stillness.
So for
Does that make
you,
sense?
Yes.
yes, I have
Okay.
a personal question. So
Okay.
for you, your intuitive hits, do you get them in the form of like thoughts or like a voice? Like, do you hear your consciousness, your higher self, your consciousness? Do you have like sensations in your body? Like, how do you receive your higher information?
I would say all of the above.
Mhm.
But I'd also say that sometimes more than anything, like I'll set an intention for something I'm looking for, or like have this idea of like what's next. And because I'm aware of it, I will see it kind of unfold, and like my body will kind of know like the next step to take to make it happen.
Mm, I like that. Using the
How
intuition
do
and the
you see
body.
it, Kels? I see pictures and like metaphors in my head always.
Hmm.
When I get a
Interesting.
download, it's always like a metaphoric image, like the climbing the mountain and seeing the view, and it's like that's what I do. I just like create a metaphor and
Right. So
spew
you're
it
clearly
out.
a very visual person.
So like yes, definitely very visual.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
100%.
interesting. For me, for for sometimes I get visuals. Usually I get more visual when I'm tuning into like other people's stuff, but for my personal downloads, they usually come in knowings that are very concrete but not always detailed. So for example,
Yeah.
it would be like, you should write this book and this is what it's called. And I'm like, okay, but like, when should I publish it? How long should it be? Like, should I
Nope, no other
self-publish
details.
it? Should I go to
Yeah.
my publisher? Like, what do I do now? And I think my spirit team, my higher self was just like, just do it, figure
Right.
it out, like just do it. And I'm like, okay, I'll do
Stop being
it.
so logical. Like just know you're
Yeah.
gonna do this.
Yes, that's kind of how it works for me. You're like, you should do this or create this. And I'm just like, okay.
I think that
I'll do my best.
that might be the hardest part of the human experience. One of them is just we have like evolved to be this like danger avoidant, logically thinking, linear like body, right? And then to merge that with the spiritual that's like just allow, just be in the flow, just you're not the same person you were yesterday. So danger doesn't exist in the same way that it's such a mind F to be able to try to like be both at the same
Yeah.
time. And I think that there's a lot of grace to be had when you can just embrace that it's not the easiest thing to do. Sitting in stillness is not the easiest thing to do. It's worth it 100%, but it's not going to be easy necessarily for everyone to do. And I think they're both important, being in the body and feeling into the body and thinking logically and needing to know the next step and the next step is important. And also it can stop you a lot of times because it doesn't match with the idea of manifesting and trying to allow the flow and be open to possibilities, right? So yeah, just a little thought. I think there's a lot of allowance for anybody listening. Like, look, this is not easy stuff and it's hard every day, but it's also beautiful and it can be very, very, it can pay off in ways that you can't even think of yet.
And
It's
it
definitely
feels
worth it.
good when you get to that meditative space where you're kind of like floaty and just like breathing and it's more quiet.
Yeah.
Oh, that is such a place of
It's
relief.
delicious. Yeah.
Yes, when you can just take a pause from the daily craziness and just be in your body, be with your breath. It's like, so good.
And there's nothing you got to do right now but breathe. Like that is such a freeing idea. There's no responsibility, nothing. You don't need to figure anything out. You just got to be here. It's very nice.
Right. I'm almost getting very calm myself.
I
Probably
know.
the listeners are
We're
all
all
like, like
Just talking
laying
about it, we're
down.
all like about to fall asleep.
We all just kind of
Right.
lulled each other.
I love it. So Ken, as a meditation teacher and advocate, what's like your daily meditative zone? Are you like a visualizing person? Are you a working with the breath person? Or do you like to do guided meditation so you're not just always doing the same meditation? Like, what are your favorite ways to work with it personally?
Yeah. So I teach a mantra-based meditation.
Cool.
So that's obviously just kind of just sitting and then repeating your mantra, and we don't focus on anything other than the mantra, I guess. So it's very simple. And then, if I'm working on something specific, I'll do guided meditations around that area of life. So those are the two things that I would say I do all the time.
Cool.
Yeah,
I like those too. Have you ever used Insight Timer? That's like my favorite meditation app.
I haven't.
You should try it. It's fun for meditation nerds because it'll give you like your stats, like how many days in a row you've meditated. It'll show you all the other people who are meditating with the
He's
app
like,
at the
I do
same
it every
time as
day.
you.
I know what I'm doing. Like, I don't need to track it. I'm good.
Yeah,
My
that's a
badge
fun
shows
one.
up in real life.
There you go. There you go.
There
We
you go.
like that too.
Can we talk about something else that you mentioned was this week that you spent in silence? And
Yes.
people tell me about this a lot. And I'm half tempted because I know I can see the benefit of it from other people, but at the same time, I'm like, what are you talking about? So can you like explain this and just tell me how you did it and what the F?
Yeah. So you just spend a week in silence. It's pretty simple. Kidding. So I'd say that so I've done it every year since my first year. So it's become a annual thing for me. But before I did my first year, I was a lot like you. I was like, oh my gosh, how can I leave everything for, a week? What am I going to do? What's going to happen? Business? Like, what am I going to think about? And so it's kind of overwhelming. And I had a lot of anxiety going into it actually. But, once you get there, so I was with each year is about 100 people that are there. And it's like a very long meditation, if you will. So the first year, a lot of thoughts for the first like 3 days of, my business is going to need me. There's going to be an emergency. Something's going to happen. Right. And it was like, I call it like the loud lessons in silence because it was probably louder than a normal day. But once I kind of relaxed into the process, it is the most freeing experience that you could ever partake in. Like, you're just so in flow with everything. Your mental chatter slows down. Any thoughts that come up, you could just obviously have to process them. So you start dealing with a lot of things you didn't even know were inside of you, and clearing those, and just getting to be present for multiple days and not have to worry about anything is an incredible experience.
Okay, so I have to ask, did you ever like accidentally say something? Because I feel like I would just accidentally be like, oh, hi. Like,
So you're like walking by people, you're like, oops, sorry, I wasn't supposed to say anything. And then you start talking and you're like, oh man, it's even worse.
Sorry.
Exactly.
I would do that.
Yeah. For the first few days, I did. Or like some mornings I'd wake up and like accidentally say something to myself out loud. I was like, oops. But I guess the best way to describe it is after the end of like the silence, I actually stayed in silence for like another 12 hours because I just wasn't ready to speak yet. So you really get comfortable in that space of silence.
Was this like at a retreat, or is this like you just take yourself away from society, or are you doing this like in your normal life?
So yeah, it's a retreat, and
Okay.
I'm actually planning on starting to host them because I think they're that beneficial.
Sweet.
But yeah, you definitely have to step away from your daily life because there's too many distractions. The other thing is during COVID, I tried to do it by myself, and it was very difficult because like you don't have. I feel like there's like a type of energy that kind of takes over the space when there's 100 people doing silence that you can kind of tap into, whereas you're doing it by yourself, it's a little bit more difficult. And I think there's just something, I don't know, inspiring about looking at other people kind of in that same space that gives each other permission to have the experience that they're going to have.
That
sounds
sounds very
sweet.
powerful.
Yeah,
I'm in. It sounds really
Let me know
awesome.
when you do the first one.
Yeah.
I want to come.
I'm just thinking like, I got 3 noisy boys. I would love a week of silence, but at the same time, freaks me out a little bit.
It does, because like you don't know I think what freaks people out the most is like you're going to have to sit with your thoughts,
Yeah.
right? And sitting by yourself alone for a few minutes is hard enough, right? You're like immediately like, ooh, what can I jump on? What can I turn on? Right? So the idea of spending multiple days just with your thought is kind of scary.
And I like that you made a point to say like when you're in silence for that long, your thoughts are louder. And I've heard that from everyone that's ever done this. And it's not the same at all, but like I'm a very light sleeper. So I'll wake up at like 4 a.m. for no reason and just be like, okay, well, I'm awake. What can I do till I fall asleep? And it's just like rapid fire. My thoughts just won't stop. And it's always louder when you're silent, when you're quiet. It's always louder.
Right.
And especially, I can't imagine doing that for a week. And then once you clear out the surface level stuff, then you get to the deeper stuff, and then the deeper stuff, and the stuff you didn't even know was there.
Right.
It's not for the faint of heart, but I do think
Yeah.
that it's definitely very powerful. And the way you describe it is very beautiful, and it seems very cleansing and, again, worth it. The hard things are usually worth it.
Right.
And the fact that you go back every year, man, it just
Yeah.
proves how beneficial it can be.
Well, it affects every part of your life and just makes everything better. Right. So people ask me all the time, like, oh, what do you get out of it? And I'm like, well, what I'm going to get out of it is very different than what you get. So, right, I don't want to like lead anybody to have an experience, but everybody that's done it comes back and then it's like, wow, like this changed, that changed, these relationships got better. And, it's funny enough, I was having a conversation with a friend, and she had done a week in silence like a year ago. And she was telling me all these things about her relationship and how she moved and her business was better and like all of these things. And then I was like, oh, so do you ever think that that kind of happened because of your silence? And she's like, well, I've been so busy, I never really thought about it. But looking back, yes, like that's what started this whole transition of my entire life. So, but if you describe that, if I decide that to you, I'm like, your whole life is going to change if you do this week. You'd be like, yeah, no way, that's crazy. So
it makes sense to me because from a perspective of improving your relationship with yourself, and if we see life as everything is relationships, you're relating to work, you're relating to your partner, you're relating to your family, you're relating to whatever, your phone, social media. Like if you can improve your relationship with yourself, of course, all your other relationships are going to improve because that's just the mirror. Your outer world, your other relationships, the people in your life, right, are usually a reflection to some degree of the relationships that you have internally. So it makes sense to me that you spend a lot of time in silence and you find some clarity that could definitely upgrade like every area of your life.
Yeah. And then if you do it every year, like anything is possible.
Yes. Compound.
Exactly.
Compounding the stillness and the silence. I like it. So we've talked about stillness, meditation, silence, some tools that are helpful for getting in alignment, lining
Tell
up
us
with
how
your
to get
own
rich,
success.
Ken. Seriously, let's just cut the BS. How do we get rich?
That is not where I was going at all, but we can go there.
You guys pick where we go.
I know it's on everyone else's mind. I'm just saying it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, so what I would say to that is, so when I wrote my book, Get There, it was mostly focused on the finance side because it was early on in my like growth. And after a decade of, being a financial advisor and having conversations with people, most people have no idea what they want.
Mm-hmm.
So for somebody to say like, oh, I want to be rich, or like, what is success? Like, I don't know, what does that mean to you? Right? Like, what is that dollar value? And like getting clarity on what the goal is super important. And then once you know what the goal is, right, then you can just work backwards to figure out what you need to do today to like start that train to your goal. And then just don't make bad decisions, right? Like if you need to save some money for a down payment on a house, or you want to buy a car, like you're gonna have to change your spending habits to make that happen. But you have to like really be willing to do that work. And if the vision of what you want and the goal is big enough, you'll do the work to do it. But if it's not, you won't, right? And then you start just spending in random areas as opposed to like focusing on the one thing you actually want.
Hey there, we hope you're enjoying this episode so far, but if you want to listen to the whole thing, we're going to invite you over to our podcast. Either search for High Vibing It on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you guys listen to podcasts, or even better, if you want to watch the extended video version of this episode that's even longer than the actual podcast itself, head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/highvibe. Lindsay, tell them what's awesome about the Patreon.
Patreon is where we have all of our extended episodes. As Kelsey said, we have it on video, so you can actually see the things that we're talking about. Sometimes we have visual aids, and it's nice to know what we're talking about. We also have hangouts that we do sometimes that are exclusive to Patreon people. And you can get started with all of this and bonus content and everything that we have only for the Patreon people for as little as $3. I think it's $3.33 a month. And that's it. And you guys can get all the benefits and all access to everything that we put in there. Really
Yeah.
cool.
It's really cool, really fun, super easy to join. And you guys don't even have to do that to finish this episode. If you're like, screw it, I don't want to pay any money, I just want to hear the rest of this episode, go to our podcast, High Vibin' It, search for it wherever you listen. It's totally free. Either way, enjoy the rest of the show wherever you choose to enjoy it. And we will see you guys next week because we do a new one every week. Adios.
Bye.